Oh, okay. So I guess I will start. So I am Ben President. I'm the sports director. So I want to thank everyone for coming out today and showing up to the webinar. So we'll go over a couple different topics today, and then we will go from there. So for today, we will go over a welcome and introduction. We'll go over COVID protocols, entries, scheduling, the venue, staging, timing, rules reminders, miscellaneous, and then questions will be at the end. Okay. All right, so entry. So we have roughly 60 athletes and unified partners registered for the cycling event this year. And the counties that will be participating will be Anne Arundel, Frederick, Montgomery, Prince George's, St. Mary's, and Upper Shores. Okay. And I will pass it to Steve.
I'll pass it to Mike.
Oh, yeah, Mike. Sorry.
Thanks, guys. And thank you to all the coaches who are here. It's been a challenging year and a half. We're really happy that we're able to have some competitions. I think each of the areas, or most of the areas, were able to have an in-house qualifier. We hosted one at headquarters and are looking forward to a really good event on Saturday at Fort Ritchie. Within all of that, as you all no doubt know from your training programs, we need to operate within the COVID protocols that are provided to us by Special Olympics International and all. So I just wanted to highlight for those who maybe are not familiar, some of the things to keep in mind, and that'll be in play on Saturday. And it's going to vary slightly between sport. So in some cases, and I think we touch on this later, but the protocols are a little different because a couple of the sports that we're offering have as a requirement that everyone participating be vaccinated. So that opens up a couple different things that we may not have to deal with in other situations. So at this time, as of right now, there's two likely scenarios that we'll be operating under. More than likely, it's going to be in what's called the moderate to high risk set of protocols, which we'll see in a slide or so. But there's a slight chance we may be able to shift to the low risk category. Regardless of that, there's a couple things that are going to be in place for the operation. We will have a check-in area that will be in the grass area. I think Steve, when we or Ben, when we go through and look at the different slides and the couple diagrams, they'll show you there. When family members arrive or whoever is bringing the athlete, they'll check in at that location. We will have to be doing on-site screening and almost definitely having to do a temperature check, just as like I'm sure you've been doing at your practices in most cases. If the family member or the person who is escorting the athlete is not a registered member of your delegation, so they're not an assistant coach or a volunteer who's been registered, they will then, after they check the athlete in and we do the screening, the family member or spectator will go over to the spectator area. Again, Steve or Ben will demonstrate or show that. And the athlete will go with their coach to the area where their delegation is waiting and will be operating from during the day. From that point forward, the spectators and family members who aren't registered delegation members will be physically separated from the athletes. That's how we've been operating for pretty much all the sports. It's how we operated summer games for any of you who were able to join us at summer games. The physical separation. It is certainly not the ideal situation or the preferred situation, but it is a necessary situation and a necessary component in order for us to be able to offer competition at this time. So we think it's certainly workable. And again, we have held some very large competitions. I think the track at Summer Games may have been the largest to date, and we had, I think, close to 200 athletes competing at that. So And it can definitely work. So, but given that, since the family members, or most of them, will be going to another location, it is essential that each group, each delegation, have a coach or one of your volunteers who's a registered member of your delegation be there before the check-in area opens at 8 o'clock to meet the athletes who are there. And can then escort them over so that the athletes aren't just, on their own. Even our very independent athletes don't necessarily know where they need to go and such. So please be sure to have that arranged, that you have someone there again when the check-in area opens at 8 o'clock, and that they are available to provide or serve in that role. If you don't have somebody there at that point, we're not going to check your athletes in. They'll wait separated from everybody, and that may mean they miss out on course inspection or other aspects getting set up. So it is absolutely essential that you have somebody there. And then secondly, as is noted there, and I had just mentioned, that the families and spectators will be remaining separate and in a different location. If you haven't already advised your family members and your athletes, for that matter, of this difference, because I know it is very different from the way the state cycling competition has operated in past years pre-pandemic, please be sure that they are aware of it. That can be a little bit, well, more than a little bit, that can be a big surprise if they're not prepared for that when they show up. So please do take that time and make sure they're aware. Sorry, just a second. There we go. So the very likely scenario is that we're going to be at the moderate or high risk category based on where the numbers are in both Maryland, and we are watching very carefully the numbers in Washington County because there's a depending upon where they're at, it may just force us into definitely being in the high risk category. That's assuming the only way that we would move out of this is that if 80% of the folks, athletes, partners, coaches, event volunteers, so on down the line, officials, if 80% of them have provided proof that they are fully vaccinated, then we can go to a slightly more relaxed situation in terms of a couple things. But it's looking at the numbers that we're at, it's really not likely that's going to be the case. So some of the things that will be in place is that screening will be required for everyone. That means staff, your coach who's arriving early, because I know you're all going to do that, will be screened as well at that location. Social distancing will be in place except during competition, and the staging area counts for that as part of the competition area. Masking, again, we're very likely to be in the high risk category. Essentially, all attendees will be wearing a mask throughout, except when the individuals are competing. So be prepared for that. And that's regardless of what their individual vaccination status is. If we were to get down to either a moderate or a low risk category, again, not likely, but if we were, then the masking would become optional for fully vaccinated folks, which can be a little bit more pleasant, but we don't think that's going to be the case. And we can absolutely run a fantastic event for the athletes and with your support in that high risk category, and a very safe one at that. So, and then a reminder that the families and spectators will be separated, and that because this can be a little confusing when we're sharing stuff, proof of vaccination is not a requirement for the sport of long distance running or cycling, for that matter. We missed an edit on the slide. So, but it's not required for cycling. It's strongly encouraged, but so we will have folks who are there who are not fully vaccinated, as opposed to, for example, flag football and powerlifting are both sports that require everyone participating be vaccinated, and they'll be operating under a slightly different set of protocol. If we were to get to 80%, again, not really likely based on where we're at, but we wouldn't need to do the screening. And then the masking, effectively, the two changes are the screening wouldn't be required when folks are checking in, although the separation still would be, and the masking would become optional for folks who are fully vaccinated there. So, but it's, again, looking at the numbers, it is extremely unlikely that that would be the case. So I think that's it on this. Yeah, we'll pass it on to Steve, unless anybody had any questions on that particular aspect of how we'll be operating. Okay. Should also point out just on the masking and such, athletes do not have to remove their masks when they're competing. They are welcome to it as an option. It's their choice. But if they wish to compete with their mask on, they certainly can. That's something for you as a coach to work out with your athletes in that situation. Sounded like we had someone who wanted to ask a question.
I think that was Gretchen.
Yeah, it's Gretchen from Prince George's. Hi.
Hi.
I'm wondering what the ask is of coaches this year, because normally, and I realize we're all trying to get through this, but normally the situation is coaches are asked to line up their athletes at the start line, which usually takes 1 to 2 coaches. Coaches are also asked to count laps. So depending on how many athletes, that's at least 1 to 2 coaches. So that's 2 to 4 coaches right there. And I don't know of many counties that have more than 2 to 4 coaches when we can't include parents. So we're a coach at the starting, lining them up, and we're a coach counting laps. I take it lunch will be as it normally is, where athletes eat when they can. We're not going to stop anything, we're not stopping for 15 minutes for them to eat. So the question and athletes get different numbers for each race. So they have to be unpinned and pinned appropriately. Otherwise that throws the system off.
Actually, the changing of the bibs is not necessary this time. The way that they're doing the chips. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. I thought we shifted.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. That's Mike. Gretchen, the good news is no changing of numbers this year. Yahoo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't minimize your other issues. Doesn't minimize your concerns there, but that.
Right. I mean, and I understand, like, it's just, trying to find that one person at least to stay back, to make sure they eat lunch, to walk with someone to the restroom if they need to walk. With such short notice, I realize it may be hard to get one parent that has gone through the system, but I just want to make it known that, there may be a team or 2 that needs an extra set of hands when we have coaches pulled in different directions.
Sure. Yeah, I understand it's a difference here. This is the setup that we've been sharing since July. So I'm not sure if it fell through the cracks somehow that you weren't aware that operating in this manner, that the parents would be separated. I apologize if that happened, but yeah, that has been the case. It has been shared repeatedly with your area leadership and such. I think, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure it was also covered in the preseason webinar. So again, that doesn't help at this point. I understand that. And we can certainly do better in getting that information out for the future. But
Mike,
yeah.
question for you. I've got at least 4 athletes that really need a one-on-one. And when I asked the leadership, or the area leadership, to add it on, they said, Rennie, you didn't have it on the original roster that was submitted way back when, so you can't add it. So they're fully vetted people. They're fully vetted volunteers. So I'd like to be able to add those to it. If I send in the names of the volunteers, then I can get my count up so that, as Gretchen says, we've got 3 coaches and a couple of volunteers, but I need to get about another 3 volunteers on the list to be able to handle all of the athletes that I have and all of the duties that I anticipate.
Yeah, let's handle that offline after
Okay.
the session.
Not a problem.
We can deal with that. I can't give you an absolute yes, but I'm not going to give you an absolute no either. Let's see what we can do.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. And Gretchen, yeah, and Tracy stole the thunder that we were going to announce later about you have one bib per athlete for the entire day. And in addition, you also have one timing chip on the bike for the whole day. So again, as Mike said, and Gretchen's given me the thumbs up, that doesn't alleviate the other concerns. And Gretchen, I think we'd make the same offer to you as well, you and Chris. You want to stay on after the call to see what possibilities may exist to help you get through the day with your athletes. So with that being said, I do want to make one clarification and one announcement as well. Mike said flag football is mandated for vaccination. That is absolutely 100% correct for the team competition. This is the first year we're offering flag football individual skills competition. And due to the high level of contact at the team competition, that's where the vaccination requirement is in place. For the skills, it's not a requirement to participate in flag football skills. So just if you hear any rumors out there, that's the distinction or the difference there. In addition, if there are anybody from your programs that are not going to be at Fort Ritchie, but at the Mount, which we will address with them as well, but just to let them know that, or if yourselves happen to come over to the Mount, anyone who's walking inside the building, regardless of what level we're in, everyone must wear a mask inside any of the buildings at the Mount St. Mary's University, except when they're actually competing in powerlifting. So with that said, we'll get right along here with some more information. As Gretchen mentioned, we will have the lunches as usual. Thank you guys so much for getting your food orders in. We have submitted those today. Well, actually submitted them last week, confirmed everything today. So they're working hard to get all the boxes and ready for distribution to get that out to you guys. As in similar years, it will come in 1 or 2 boxes labeled with your delegation, be delivered to the venue. Coaches and or any of assistants who have been registered can help gather that lunch and then get that out to the athletes and other members of the registered program. As Mike said, again, it's just worth really repeating as much as we've continued to state this, there are always challenges with individuals who are not informed leading up to it, that families and spectators, non-credentialed members have to remain separated at all times, minimum of 50 feet. And we'll talk about where those locations will be throughout the day. So, and I say that because at our Golf State Championship, I think that was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, I can't even know, I don't even remember right now. But there were some situations that were challenging with certain family members who were not informed. So really important to have you guys help us out with that communication process. Again, that starts as soon as they check in. Once they get checked in and screened, they go to the delegation area as far as competitors and delegation members. Everyone else goes to the spectator area and remains there through the entire event, even through awards. After individuals get their awards and are heading to their car, that's when the handoff can then take place to get back with their families and supporters. So here's a basic schedule. As we talked about the delegation check-in and all that, we'll start at 8. So again, coaches and other members, make sure you're there ahead of time so that we can get through that registration and the screening and get everybody in place. Warm up, the course inspection and warm-ups around that 8:30 timeframe. Coaches meeting, and again with the warm-ups, really advisable to have coaches out there on the course or others to monitor that during that time frame. We'll have a brief coaches meeting there in that delegation area near the start line. We will not have a large or a lengthy opening ceremony. It will be extremely brief. We're doing the same thing at Mount St. Mary's University. We've always had a big bang out opening ceremony. Each venue will have a very brief competitive or competition venue opening to basically say, welcome, here we go, and there we go. So about 5 minutes, and that's all that the opening ceremony will be. We'll get right into the competition. During that ceremony briefing, the 10K will be staged. That will be our first race of the day. Again, we eliminated the 15K this year. So we'll get the 10K starting off the day. And you don't see times here as we were just finalizing some of the scheduling today, but you'll see the race order. So the 10K will go followed by the 2K, the 500 meter, the 5K, then the 1K will end out the day. Hopefully that eliminates, and it should pretty much eliminate anybody from having back-to-back races, and also giving a little bit of a time break there for those racing the 10K and the 5K later that afternoon. And then we're, depending on the schedule and how the day goes, I think a safe guesstimate there is about a 4 o'clock stop time. But again, as with any event, it says tentative, and we won't know the final schedule till October 16th, probably about 7 p.m. So little joke there. Okay. So this is kind of the layout. Nothing's really changed on the layout on the overall large scale of things. The typical come in entry points and typical parking areas. I will say we need to be very careful and very respectful of the Fort Ritchie property. It has recently been purchased by a new ownership group, and we are one of the very few, if any others, from outside groups who they have maintained the relationship and opportunity for us to have this venue for the athletes. So again, we want to maintain and respect this. So the parking area you see at the kind of the center top left, yeah, right there, that's going to be primarily for the family members parking and others. And then there may be those other additional parking, but we'll try to leave those for staff and some volunteer groups that are coming in. Okay.
Hey, Steve, this is Jim Russell.
Yep.
Just a quick note, that parking spot, that first one kind of in the center of the screen, is usually where we kind of come in the back way and drop off all our bikes.
Yep.
So can we still do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we're probably going to leave our trailer and all right there.
Yeah. I don't see any changes there, Jim.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because you said it was going to be family members parking. It's a little different. Over.
We should be good. We'll be monitoring that as well. Here is the previous year's diagram, 2019. The layout will be defined when we get up there as we work through it a little bit. But one thing to note is, Mike, if you could take the cursor and the yellow delegation box in the upper left corner there, that will primarily be, as the coaches who've been here before, you see the turn coming around the turn right by the yellow box, heading down the final straightaway. Up in that area will be the spectator seating area. Okay, so that's the only place really that the spectators can be during the competition in regarding upholding our protocols. The delegation area will be morphed a little bit, probably stretching out towards the tree line back to open it up more for delegation members, and that's where we'll have the check-in. So families and athletes will walk up to the check-in tent or check-in area, and then at that point they will be separated. They'll remain in that general area as the athletes make their way to the delegation area. With that being said, we're also looking at the layout on how we're going to do awards. We're going to do our darndest to make sure that the awards, instead of in the tent facing the finish line, they will be facing up towards the blue parking word on this diagram, so that although the family members will be 50 feet at minimum separated, they will at least be able to see some of the awards ceremony. I know it doesn't provide great photo opportunities, but it's better than having them not seeing anything at all. We had this at state golf championships and others. And again, more than welcome to take pictures after the event's over as they're walking out by a sign or a banner or whatever. But again, our number one thing is to make sure that we offer the opportunity for the athletes. So again, you could let your families know that they'll be able to see some things, but they won't be at the finish line. They won't be able to be running up and down the straightaway and cheering everybody on. The one point really is that turn area. We'll look at any possibilities for the 500 meter, knowing that that's a second or a separate finish area.
Well,
But
actually, no, Steve, that's
mean-
what I want to bring up. So you've got on your course map, you say 1K course. That actually should say the 500 meter start.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's what I meant. It's a separate start, not a separate finish. So
Yeah, but on your map, you say you've got it saying 1K course, and that should read 500 meter start.
yeah, the red is a 1K course, but around where it says 1K course, that is also where the 500 meter start is.
Yeah, okay, I just want to be sure that people understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's been there, so they know pretty much about that.
And Rennie, to answer your question, no, spectators will not be able to go around the course due to the fact of volunteers and course marshals and athletes, and that's just going to be really, really difficult to monitor and continue to go around and talk to people and say, hey, step back, this isn't a place for you, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, unfortunately, and again, Mike didn't state this, but other state programs throughout the country have had some events here and there, most of which they have said no spectators at all. So we felt we're doing our darndest to give the spectators an opportunity to be there, to see the athletes, but there are some very big limitations with that being said.
Hey, Steve, Jim Russell again, sorry. As far as where the awards tent is there, so, and the spectators are going to be over where the parking demarcation there is on the picture at the top of the screen. Is that where the spectators are going to be there?
Yeah, again, Jim, this was, again, just because we haven't figured it out quite yet, but most likely this is the layout from 2019.
Yeah.
But if you take the orange awards area and put it up towards the top of the yellow box in between where it says, we're going to do our best to move it up there so that it may be a little bit of a walk from the finish line to get staged for the awards, but we want to give that straight view from the family.
Yeah, that's much better. I was misunderstood that you had said that it was a 2019 awards setup, and now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like I said, we're just trying to figure out the layout, and that'll be defined more on Friday. But that is our intention, is to move the awards on the other side of the delegation area so that spectators can at least see the award ceremony.
Where will the check-in be?
It'll be right there in that general area at the top of the yellow box as you're looking at the screen now. So you'll park, you'll come up. Yep, where the right where Mike's very creative and very much more technology savvy than I am.
Thanks, Mike.
Little blue or purple circle there. Thanks, Mike. I did see another question come in. So yeah, again, all delegations and spectators will definitely have separated seating. The delegation members, you guys will come and be in that general area in the yellow box. That's where you can set up your pop-up tents. All other non-credentialed individuals will have to go back up to the spectator area, kind of in that red circle area that Mike put on the diagram there.
I think Steve, I think the question actually is that Bill has is, so once if you're a member of a delegation and you're in here, do you need to stay separated from the other delegations? And the answer to that is no. Once you're in the competition or the event space, if you will, you've been screened and you're a registered member of a delegation and such. I mean, other than proper decorum and being respectful of other space, you don't have to stay separated. You can go over and say hi to somebody or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, we know it's really good to have the athletes see each other. But again, with that being said, we do want to monitor as coaches and other members of your delegations to keep that 6 foot distancing and most likely wearing the masks during any of that time.
And would they be frowned upon high-fiving and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah, again, that 6 foot distancing, as hard as it is to monitor that and enforce that. You know, realistically, it's going to happen.
Yep.
But you know, we to do our best as coaches and management and volunteers to keep those reminders coming. And I always say, hey, virtual high five, social distancing, and for the most part, athletes and other people get it. And most people want to stay away from me anyway, so that's probably helpful. But thanks guys for your questions. We'll move on to the next one here.
And there's not going to be any separation in the spectator area by county or anything. They'll just commingle, so to speak.
Yeah, that's kind of a general public area and they can monitor themselves. Hopefully do a good job at that, but that's not something where we have the capability to manage all of that. Thank you, guys. With that, I think I now turn it over to Ben.
Yep. So order of events, like Steve stated earlier, it will go 10K first, followed by the 2K, then 500 meter, then 5K, and then we will conclude with the 1K. All right. So bib numbers and timing. This event will use chip timing, and then, like it was also stated earlier, unlike past years, this year racers will have one chip and one bib number for the entire day. Please make sure the bib numbers are in good condition. So we don't want them, balled up or torn to shreds or anything like that, so that they are very visible when they are going around the track. And then we will also do as usual when it comes to attaching the chips to the bikes, which is something that will be pretty much just like the years before. And then lastly, it is the coach's responsibility to count the laps. And if coaches pull athletes off the course too early due to miscounting laps, which I know can happen because we are human, but unfortunately, if that were to happen, we would have to disqualify that athlete.
Yeah, just so you know, the lap cards will be showing the leader on the course at the time. So that's how it'll work. And then everybody else keeps track. But there will be lap cards. Steve created some really nice laminated ones. So, hopefully we'll have a volunteer holding that up. But leader on the track will have the laps showing to them.
So check-in staging. So bib numbers will state the delegation, athlete's name, race, and division number. Staging, when it comes to staging, please listen to announcements, and this will be for all events. The timed events such as the 1K and 500 meter will be staged according to the start sheets. However, if there are a number of scratches, starters may be moved up in start order. When looking at the 2K, 5K, and 10K, those races will start in waves with separate starts within each wave. Scratches could affect wave start orders. So, for instance, we do still, once again, need you guys to pay attention if there are any type of announcements or anything like that, just in case we do have to move athletes up or change times. So, stay alert and keep listening as much as possible. I know it'll be hard with everything going on.
One of the other things I'll step in here, Ben, just talking with Ken Racine from our timing system operators. Although you guys don't have to worry about changing bib numbers for each event, for each racer, as well as the timing chips, there will be a little bit of a changeover from the operations of the timing system. So although you guys don't have to do a lot of changes, we made it easier for you guys. The timing system individuals will take a little bit of time to close out one race, prepare for the next race, etc. Because we're using the same bib number and the same timing chip, there is a reset for the timing system. So just so you're aware of that. So although it's great for you guys, it's a little bit more a hassle for the timing people, but we're paying them a little bit. So we'd let the hassle go on them. So back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Steve. And then this is pretty much an overall outline of the time trial staging. So of course it's an aerial view, and it'll be kind of like in the past. So if you guys went in 2019, it's pretty much the same setup. So it'll be new to me because it'll be my first time.
For everybody who had 1K athletes, as you recall, we started the athletes just beyond the start line. So they started on the right side of the course, and then they came through their chip timing, and then we needed to have a volunteer or somebody who needs to get them off the course, because you'll have riders finishing and riders starting. So that's just a little point that for those of you who have had 1K athletes, something that we need to pay attention to. So I'm not exactly sure how I'm reading this time trial staging and the different boxes. But because there'll be a little bit of time between, let's see, what's the race order? The 1K. So when the 5K is over, we'll let people know when that last wave is starting. So essentially, when you know that last wave of 5K is on the course, your 1K athletes, have about 15-ish, 20 minutes to get themselves together, that they should then be ready, and will then announce the time that they can cross the course below the finish line to cross over to get to the start in their order.
Yeah, and we can give a little bit more detail about that. Again, this is an overview from 2019 during the coaches meeting. I'm sure Tracy can address exactly how we're going to do all the staging, et cetera. So I appreciate.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is pay attention. 1K is because you follow the 5K, that'll give you your warning whistle for your 15 to 20 minutes, because again, as you say, Ken needs a few minutes of time to switch over, but to get folks over to the staging. I guess that goes on. You want me to take on the next part, which kind of flows right in?
So I have timing, and you have the slide right after.
Okay.
So timing and results. Racing Multisport is the company used to record the times for this event. And pretty much the results can be obtained via the link above on mobile devices and tablets near the awards area. So this will be given to you all the day of the event as well, so you guys can see the results. That was it.
So I'm just going to show you, again, everybody's been familiar with how we've set up the road races. This time, because we did set up some socially distancing COVID protocols and we discussed this last week or whenever it was with our cycling committee, to limit the number of athletes in a row. So this time I specifically said what row folks are going to be in. And because we are limiting to no more than 4 athletes to a row, it meant that a few times in some of the races, someone who was in the same division got bumped down to the second row. But what we're going to do is and we put this as an example in this slide, that this second row, when the whistle blows for wave 1, that one rider will, and it happens to be Kyle, will start at the same time as row 1. And no different than in typical racing where, people are all lining up in rows, and we've done this before. So not everybody in the same, heat actually starts on the first row. But this time we did assign rows. In the past, we have not assigned rows. So if anybody has any questions about this, let me know. That's probably the newest. This is the newest thing when it comes to timing. And, so it'll be important. And one of the things, because we will need a lot of help from coaches for staging and getting athletes into the correct rows, is you will have more copies of the start sheets in your respective packets. So as many volunteers or coaches as possible can have access to that to help with the staging. Because we are short on some volunteers who chose not to come because of COVID. Just a quick reminder, again, I don't want to spend any much time on this, as everybody knows that we do follow UCI, USAC rules. So we do pay attention to that. One of the things that is a Special Olympics special one is athletes taking their hands off the handlebars to look like a pro when they're finishing. Sid keeps asking me all the time if he can do that, and I'm like, no, you cannot. And then again, in terms of the entire distance, this is where, as coaches, when you have a short lap of a 1K and you've got folks doing 5 and 10 of varying abilities, we absolutely need all of your help to keep your athletes on point and on the number of laps that they have to go. Otherwise, it's impossible. In typical racing, everybody just finishes on the lap leader, and we decided long ago that that's not what we needed to do here. So I appreciate all of your help in advance, and it's a tricky one, I know. Protests, I'm not sure. It's 30 minutes after posting, so I don't know if Steve, Mike, where you're posting results or how that's going, if you've got digital stuff. So I don't really know exactly what that particular piece is, how that's going to get handled. So if you wanna...
that'll be posted over in the awards area. I think typically they've posted it on tables and stuff like that in the past, so that'll be the same thing moving forward.
Okay. And then again, just reminding everybody in terms of the rules that you can coach your athletes. You can tell them to shift. You can tell them to chase the person down. You can do whatever you want to do. If they flat, you can go out and help them, or if their chain falls off, you can help them, get them back on their bike and give them, however many meters, 10 meters or whatever you're allowed to push them. So all of that is allowed. And this year, unfortunately, we are not allowing spectators on the back side of the course. I hope, because Steve and Mike, we won't have folks potentially on the back, is to encourage whoever are marshals to encourage them to be cheerers to help keep our athletes on task. And, with some kind of level, it gets pretty quiet on the backside of the course with nobody cheering.
Yeah, I think not only to have those volunteers as the course marshals give the encouragement to the athletes, but also if there is a breakdown on a bike, they will have radios to also notify anybody who needs to provide assistance there, as well as
right. And if you're lucky enough to have a volunteer who actually knows how to put a chain back on, that'd be great. So the clothing, this is a hard one because of the length of how far all of you are coming. How early in the morning people have to leave. Is unfortunately, I think for a lot of athletes, they need to come in their chamois, but if there's a way that they don't have to come in their cycling shorts, I think the 10K athletes probably absolutely do, because they need to get racing and warming up, and maybe even the 2K. But as soon as they're done for the day, changing skirts, blankets being held, or somewhere to get them out of their shorts. They should not be in chamois from 5 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. It's definitely not very hygienic. So I think the other piece is rain. It looks like there's a chance of showers. We do ride, this is an all-weather course. Probably the trickiest thing, if the road were to get really wet, is the last corner. Let's hope we don't have super wet roads, but I would just say that if there's a chance, is to think about what the undershirt is underneath their jersey. Unfortunately, cotton isn't the greatest undershirt, but it's better than nothing. If someone happens to have a cycling undershirt, that's good to layer up. But right now, the temperature, from what I'm seeing, maybe you guys are seeing something else, it looks pretty warm. So, but some athletes get cool no matter what, even when it's 70 degrees. If they are going to wear a jacket, need to pin them accordingly on their jacket, so not just on the jersey. And sweatpants, they're great for warming up, but as you all know, not so great for racing. So if they've got something tighter, that's great, but we all know athletes some of them get fixated on what they like to wear, and that's if they've always raced in sweatpants, and that's what they race in. But hopefully, I think we've come a long way with our clothing, so it's great. Any questions up to now? And we just talked about the mechanical assistance piece. Here's the number pinning. So we are going on the right side, and actually this is showing a left side, but that's a left side. So when we're talking about the sides, it gets a little confusing. It's really the left side of the back versus wrapped around in that chest period a little bit. You can see where that 44 is really on the back versus on the inside. Anybody with a trike, as you know, we need to have the number on the back of the trike because we can't see it obviously on the athlete. The other piece is pinning. One of the things that you can see, if you look at the way the pins are, the pins go through the paper twice. So you get more paper per, square inch of your pin and keeps it from flapping. Steve, Ben, I don't know how many pins you are allowing, but 4 tends to be a little bit on the lean side. So if you can have 6, that's great. Well, let's work towards not having, first of all, flapping numbers are slower numbers. But that's what we're looking for is on the side of the back, right side.
We can have as many pins as anyone could reasonably desire, so.
Yeah, so one of the things is you have the pins, there, and some of you probably already have pins. Hopefully they're real safety pins and not those tiny little gold things, right?
No, they're real safety pins, yep.
Okay, good, good. I'm just curious, are the numbers that we have, do they have holes in them or no holes?
90% sure they do have holes in the 4 corners.
Yeah, they
Okay,
do.
so I just want to tell all you guys, maybe I'm a little OCD on pinning, but the holes are decoy. That's because what happens is someone goes and puts the pin through the hole to the jersey, and 1, it helps you actually start ripping your jersey some more, and 2, that's part of your flapping number stuff. So ignore the holes, they're decoys, and go right through paper to paper twice to your jersey, and you'll save your jerseys. Because one of the things when you pin the paper like that, you're not pulling on your jersey. And we know jerseys are expensive and don't need a lot of pinholes in them. I think is that all me here? Who's next? I think that's food. I guess the food piece. So, it's tough when you have everybody's racing darn near back to back. So, your 10K athletes, your athletes who have been driving at least a couple of hours, very few people are going to be under an hour by the time they get up there. All have had breakfast, maybe upwards to 3 hours or 4 hours before they race. So think about some Cliff Bars, bananas, or something that they can have when they get to the venue. And remember, even the breakfast, if you have any control or can help the athletes thinking about their breakfast, oatmeal and an egg is something that will stick with them more than just a piece of toast or even just cereal. But having some protein with the breakfast will help carry them through. And then also be sure even though it's not super warm, to keep staying hydrated. And again, think about their meals and when they're going to eat. So the 10K athletes need to eat something, probably not their full lunch, but they do need to eat something when they finish because they're going to end up racing the 5K in, 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. So, you got to just be careful of what they're eating and when they're eating. And I know all of you have experience with that. And, some athletes need more. I know Sid, we have to tell him not to glob the peanut butter on, but I'll tell you, you can't beat having a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter for those who are not allergic, and spreading the peanut butter thin and the piece of bread. Fig Newtons are really great, and obviously bananas. And save the soft drinks for after the racing. If you want to jack an athlete up, give him a Coke before, and that'll help give him the caffeine and the sugar. So that's legalized doping here. There are no concessions at the event. Family members, and I think you all know this, there is a mini mart just what would you say, maybe just a block or 2 off the traffic light on 550 from the Ford, I believe, right?
Yep.
And there's no hot coffee, there's nothing. So I'm prepared, especially coaches that are coming a long way and will definitely need caffeine, I think, Jim, getting up at 3:30 or 4 to make the drive up. So you can't go wrong with your coffee thermoses.
And I think to piggyback on that, as I mentioned, it's under new ownership. So when we talk about the lunches and food, the other thing that we're not going to be doing is the Gatorade water dispensers. We will have some bottled water for distribution, but as coaches, if you want to plan also to bring some bottled water or have athletes bring their own water bottle so that they can put the bottled water in the water bottle. But I think just from a planning perspective, from hydration, et cetera, again, trying to eliminate as much contaminants as we can, so we won't have the big water dispensers that everyone goes up to, touches, et cetera. In that same regard, as far as waste management after lunches and cleanup, we always say this, and for the most part, everyone's been great about it, but really important this year at Fort Ritchie so that we can possibly come back in the future is to make sure that the families in their area and yourselves and athletes really do their own cleanup, so that, again, to eliminate as many contagions as possible so that people aren't having to go up and clean up after everybody. Just kind of contain that within yourselves and clean up so that we leave the venue in pristine condition and hopefully better than what we received it in.
Yeah, and then speaking of that water, like if you're bringing, some big gallon jugs of water, if the athletes all bring 1 or 2 of their own bottles, and then if you have powdered Gatorade, then you can actually monitor how much Gatorade goes in, because full Gatorade in a bottle that you get at the store is really high in sugar. So you can cut that down. And then just be sure that athletes know when they're home to do some bleaching of their water bottles. And of course, one of the most important things is no sharing of water bottles between the athletes and coaches, et cetera. So volunteers and family members who are helping, that's a big thing to remind them about bringing their water, their drinks, whatever they need, because there is nothing.
So inclement weather plan. So in the case of inclement weather, which can happen, and like it was stated earlier, there is a chance of showers. Races can be delayed. With races being delayed, if the weather does not clear up, the event could be canceled, but that would be up to the competition director. They would have the final say on that.
But then
as
we're
far-
not canceling. We're not canceling for rain, only if it's,
If
like
it's
really
it gets
bad.
progressively worse, of course.
Yeah.
In the case of thunder and lightning, of course, we would try to move everyone inside. So that would be inside Fort Ritchie's operations building. And then if it's just raining, of course, then there will be tents outside designated for athletes and families and coaches to be under. So that's pretty much the gist of that. And then there is also absolutely no parking permitted on the grass. So like Steve said, because there is new ownership, we want to respect their rules so that we can come back the next year.
I would, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, it says no parking, but there's no driving on the grass also. So it's not even to pull up on the parade ground and drop stuff off. It's not, just keep all vehicles off the grass.
Yeah, 100%. Again, with the new ownership, I continue to reiterate that it's, they have had some individual groups who have been there in the past that, because of I don't want to say they didn't respect the property, but there were issues, and now those groups are no longer allowed back. So again, it's very imperative that we respect the grounds. And my lights just went out. But yeah, it's stay off the grass with any vehicles. Obviously, we can put up our pop-up tents, and families can do that. You guys can do that, but any vehicles need to remain off the grass.
All right, and this concludes the webinar. Are there any questions? Right.
Can you send me that slideshow after you're done? please?
Yeah, Ken, and for everyone, the webinar was recorded, so the slides will be sent out at some point, no later than tomorrow, by the end of the day, and that'll also be posted along with the recording on our website, the coaches resource page.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep, sure thing. And again, I think we've got one more slide here. Should have mentioned this in the beginning. So this has been President's first official event with Special Olympics Maryland. Zach Centron, who has been leading the charge with cycling and other sports, he is still with Special Olympics Maryland, but he has moved to working with the IUS, or Interscholastic Unified Sports Program in the high schools. So he's leading that charge. He will be out there with us, but just wanted to make you aware that Zach is still with Special Olympics Maryland. And then the other sports directors, Ryan Kelchner, will be overseeing powerlifting and long distance running over at the Mount, as well as Melissa Anger overseeing flag football and tennis. And if you haven't seen it already, hopefully you've been seeing the emails from Ben. That's his contact information. With that being said, guys, I think the key takeaways here are, as Mike indicated at the beginning, thank you guys so much for being flexible and getting your in-house qualifiers, working with other programs to qualifying times so that we can have this event, your flexibility leading up to this event, our flexibility, we're all in this together. And obviously there's going to be some challenges, but from a coach's perspective, to assist us in the overall management of things is really communicate to the family members and spectators of the expectations so that we don't have to take the management personnel's time during the day of the event to continue to address family members who were not made aware of it and are not pleased with the situation that we have to address. But again, it's without you guys, there is no event. Spending the time and the dedication for the athletes, providing them this opportunity and communicating with us throughout the season. Obviously it's not the ideal scenario, but I think hopefully you guys are in the same boat as we are here at the state office. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And it's a heck of a lot better than nothing, but it's an opportunity for the athletes to get back out, show their skill levels, have the camaraderie, have the competition flair, and just really experience a good day. So kudos to you guys for everything you've done through the season. And with that, I will shut up and see if anybody else has any comments. Tracy, anything you'd like to add?
Oh, well, Steve, I'm all good, but I'm just wondering if you and I could talk for a few minutes right after the call.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on with Chris, Gretchen, and Rennie, and I can call you shortly thereafter.
Okay, great.
All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I will speak for Ben and appreciate your time this evening. And those who we mentioned